This is the last week we're going to cover any type of interventions that you could potentially use to resolve performance issues. So this week we're going to talk about organizational communication and organizational design and development. As always, here we are in the HPT model and where we're at, and we've really basically covered all of them now. And so you really should have a really full toolbox of different interventions that you can think about and potentially use for your project. Now, organization communication is really a big, broad field that encompasses all type of communications that allow organizations such as companies and government agencies and nonprofits to function, grow, connect with stakeholders, and contribute to society. Now, organizational communications includes both internal communications, such as messaging around the organization's mission, interpersonal communication between management and employees, and professional communication, such as emails. But it also includes external facing communications. So as you can see, organizational communication is a broad topic, so we're only going to cover just a few areas. We're going to talk about an alternative to a suggestion system. We're going to see a video on that, grievance systems, and conflict resolution. Now, under organizational design and development, that's the process of organizing people within a structure that's going to support the organization's mission, goals, and activities to operate more efficiently, effectively. And today we're going to cover the 6 areas that fall into this. Also, another area we're going to cover is, which I've been asked to cover by the IO Advisory Board, is the Danaher business system, and it's pretty interesting. So we'll be covering that at the last part of the presentation. Now, we're all kind of familiar with the definition of communication. I think we covered probably even in the elementary school, and it's really transferring the meaning between a sender and a receiver. Although, it really appears to be a simple process, I think we can all relate that it's really not all that easy. So a lack of communication or miscommunication can be a major cause of performance issues. And, if we go back to the behavior engineering model, lack of clear expectations, and that's communicating them to employees, can be a cause of poor performance. So, and you're probably realizing some of this poor communication in your own project. So when you have an organization with a workforce that has all different communication skills, you really have to kind of focus on that. So, excuse me, we're going to look at interventions to help improve organizational communication. Excuse me. Now, for most of my working career, leaders were continually seeking out employee suggestions, and I hope that's the case in your organization. However, as a leader myself, the typical suggestion system were archaic and, quite frankly, didn't work all that well. So let's take a look at a video that proposes a really different type of organizational suggestion system.
Should you be using a suggestion box to solicit ideas for improvement from employees? I'll talk about the effectiveness of that in this video. Hello, I'm Stephen Goldberg of Optimist Performance, bringing you practical tips and ideas on leadership, team development, and employee performance in the workplace. If you really want employees to improve performance, you have to have them participate, but not using a suggestion box. There's that old cartoon that shows somebody putting a suggestion into a box, and then you have a garbage pail right under the box collecting the ideas. And that's often what happens because management doesn't take the time to go through the suggestions and to actually implement the ideas and then give feedback to employees. And that's really what you want to do if you want employees to be excited about participating in continuous improvement. And who doesn't? So the idea is to get them involved proactively through discussions, through problem-solving meetings, and to select the best ideas that will have the biggest impact on the organization, and then get them involved in implementing those ideas and measuring the results. In fact, Giving continuous feedback to employees on their suggestions will keep them motivated to want to contribute new ideas for improvement. Now, in one of my last videos, I talked about improving performance using a participative approach, and it's really crucial because you want them to feel psychological ownership, which will lead to their commitment to do what needs to be done to implement any change from their suggestions, or even that management brings for changes in the organizations. So get rid of the suggestion box, start participating with employees. Of course, that means a change in leadership style. I have many videos on adapting a participative leadership style, so check those out. I hope this tip is useful for you and that you'll take action. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Check out some of the other videos, also the blog articles on our website that accompany many of these videos. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, since I've been around for a while, I remember way back in the day that we had a suggestion box that had a lock on it, and you'd write your suggestions and put it in there, and you'd wonder if you'd ever get a response. Well, obviously those days are gone. Now, probably some organizations have electronic suggestion systems that might be a little easier to track. But I really like this gentleman's approach, where if you have a leader that's more participative in talking to employees on, all the time and asking for their input, that's going to be a lot more effective than some type paper electronic suggestion system. So just so that you understand what a participative leadership style is, I went ahead and put in this next video just to kind of like a bonus video to help you understand what that leadership style is.
Should you be using it? What is the most effective leadership and management style? I'll talk about that in this video. Hello, I'm Stephen Goldberg of Optimus Performance, bringing you practical tips and ideas on leadership, team development, and personal performance in the workplace. Leadership and management styles vary. On one end, you have the control style of leadership, and on the other end, you have the participative style. What is the best or most effective leadership styles? Well, it depends on the situation and the people that you're dealing with. For example, when there's a blaze, a fire chief takes a control style of leadership most of the time. He needs to be in charge and direct the troops. He has the overall vision of what's going on. But what happens when there is no fire? What does the fire chief do with his troops? Well, he engages in activities like debriefing, problem solving, training, coaching, giving feedback, listening to what their experience was at the last fire, that type of thing. What do leaders and managers and organizations do every day? Are they fighting problems which are like fires that are urgent and have to be addressed immediately? Are you spending most of your time doing that? Or are you balancing your time between dealing with problems and being proactive to prevent problems? And that's why the participative style of leadership is most effective if you want to take on a leadership style that contributes to productivity, to continuous improvement, and to have people participating in those types of activities. To take on a participative leadership style requires the leader to reflect upon his own personal style or his preferred style, and also to develop the skill set in leadership and management in order to be effective at being a participative style of leader. This means skills such as listening, training, coaching, giving feedback, problem solving, group meetings, running group meetings. So these are the skills that take time to develop. Each leader has their own personal strengths and challenges when it comes to taking on a participative leadership style. For some leaders and managers, it's more natural to be a control type of leader. For others, it's easier to be a participative style of leader. And this really requires a leader to understand themselves and work on their challenges, use their strengths appropriately, and to also understand the people that you're dealing with. I'll talk about participative leadership style in more depth in future videos and articles, and what the leader needs to do to develop the skill set in order to grow towards that. It's an ongoing process, but by far it is the most effective leadership style, especially to promote teamwork and continuous improvement. One great resource to learn about yourself and your strengths and weaknesses relative to your type, which influences your style of leadership, is the book Crazy Zoo, Know Thyself Made Easy. You can find the link to learn more about that in the description of this video. Subscribe to my channel to be aware of new videos as they come out. Check out my last video from my previous series. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, I really thought that was an interesting video, and I thought about my career as a leader. While I was in the military, I probably had more of a controlling type of leadership style because, frankly, that's the way the military is. But as I continued in my career in the federal service, I kind of moved over to a more participative leadership style, which I think I really liked even more. So I'd be interested to hear from any of you that feel that their leaders and their organization, or maybe their first line, does any of them really feel that they have a participative leader in their organization that they work with or work for?
No.
No, is more directing and controlling, Gabby?
Yeah, well, we have no leader. It's just, well, based off like the PowerPoints, we have a manager. We don't have a leader. She's
Well,
she's not motivating. She's more so making sure you're at your shift, and that's it. So
wow. Well, I am sorry to hear that, but I can tell you maybe one of your recommendations is leadership training for her. So
yeah.
that's a shame. Yeah, that's a shame. That's a shame because it's a tough situation to work in when you don't have that person that tries to motivate you. So, but does anybody else, or Gabby, if you want to continue on, anyone else? All right. Well, if not, that's okay. We're going to go ahead and move on. And really, as as a function of people working together, there are times when things just don't go as well as they should, and an employee becomes dissatisfied. I mean, it's just the fact of life. So an employee may have a grievance against the organization that must be solved through a formal grievance system. Now, the grievance system is a formal process for submitting, evaluating, and providing feedback related to the employee's grievances. In many cases, the Human Resources Department will administer the grievance system. So typically, grievance systems are found in union organizations, but they really can be found in any organization. Now, when I worked for the federal government, in our HR department, we had, especially one really large organization, we had a full-time in fact, we had two labor relations specialists, and they're the ones that actually performed the function of, taking in the employee grievances and being that person that helped resolve those issues. So here is the typical grievance process, and I'll go over it very quickly. The manager and employee discusses a grievance, possibly with a union representative if that's the case, and then the individual expresses the grievance in writing because it needs to be that to management, and then HR, management, and union discuss the grievance, and hopefully it can be resolved at that level. The management expresses decision in writing, maybe the union or union rep, or if there's no union rep, somehow the individual decides to escalate the grievance, and then it's brought in this case to the national union, or in an organization that didn't have a union, maybe the senior executive. Okay? And then if some resolution cannot be made, an arbitrator can be brought in to make the final decision on the agreements. Even in the federal government, I know of cases where an employee had a grievance and the organization had to hire an arbitrator to be able to go over and come up with the final decision because the organization and individual just could not come to meet. So hopefully that you have some type of formal grievance procedure in your organization, or if you see this as an issue in your project, you might want to go ahead and recommend that. Now, if you have to implement a grievance system, here is a table that I like to try to give you as much tools as possible. On the right-hand side, on left-hand side, I'm sorry, these are the keys to how to effectively implement it. And then on the right-hand side, how you as a practitioner can help. So just wanted to make that available to you. So, it's a fact of life that there's going to be conflict either in, your personal or professional life at some point. I actually experienced that today. I don't know if I told you, and I might have, I got selected by the city council to serve on the Board of Zoning Appeals. And today we had a public hearing where there was some conflict between groups of individuals, one individual putting a home up, and where people around them didn't thought there was some zoning violations. In fact, there wasn't. And so I have to, resolve some conflict today. So conflict is a process of, expressing dissatisfaction, disagreement, or unmet expectations with any organizational interchange. So when a conflict occurs, here are some suggestions on how to create an environment that resolves those. Forget, don't focus on the people, focus on the problem. Okay, people too much try to focus on the individual. Wow, they did this and they're that, blah blah blah. And I heard that today in our public hearing. What's the real problem? Focus on the core problem, and don't invalidate that each person in this conflict has valid concerns, and also empathy, foster empathy. I mean, today I had some individuals that said, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, thank you very much. I can certainly understand how you feel. Okay. And let them know that at least you understand what they're saying. Get as much insight from all the participants, and then, hopefully come up to a solution where it's a win-win for all the parties. So that's really what I've always tried to do, where it's a win-win for all the parties. Unfortunately, today that wasn't the case. But so now on Blackboard, I've included a lot of performance support tools and job aids for this lesson. Obviously, I don't have the time to go over all of them. So if you need to have them as a resource, and there's one specifically on conflict management, you can get that from Blackboard. Okay, are there any questions so far? We have gone for an hour, so what I'd like to do is just take 5 minutes so everybody can get a break and maybe get a refresh on their beverage. So let's come back at 7:07. All right, thank you. Okay, it is now 7 minutes after. We're going to go ahead and get started so that we can get finished for tonight. I know tonight's a longer night because of having to make it up, but we're gonna be done probably within about 45 minutes or so, or a little bit longer than that. So let's go ahead and move on to the second real broad group of interventions, and this falls under organizational design and development. And there's 6 different areas that we're going to cover, and as you can see on the screen: team effectiveness, problem solving, decision making, strategic planning, culture, and I'm not sure if I covered diversity or not. I think I do. So let's make sure that we'll make sure we cover all those. Okay, team effectiveness. You know, I really can't stress enough about the importance of team effectiveness. From sports teams to small organization teams, really all of them have one thing in common: to be effective. You know, effective is different for a sports team. You know, for a sports team, it's winning. And for a smaller organizational team, it's meeting the goals for that team. So, you know, today's teams are, I think, are much different from the past teams. They're far more diverse, dispersed, especially now. You know, we're all, you know, many of them not working in the physical office. We have the digital age, and teams are a lot more dynamic with changes in membership. But while the teams face these hurdles, their success still hinges on a core set of fundamentals for group collaboration. So for teams to be effective, they need to be proficient in many different areas. One is team building. You know, there's different levels of team building: the forming, norming, storming, and performing. I don't know if you've ever heard of those before, the 4 different levels. As teams initially get together, you know, sometimes they have conflicts, and as they move through, they finally come into the performing area where they're a full functioning team. Times also too, to be an effective team, there's going to be some conflicts, okay, and there's going to have to be some resolution, especially with the team leader. Interpersonal communications, how they communicate, who is the leader, who's the team leader. You know, also, because there's meeting, how do we effectively have meetings that are productive and timely? Also coaching and counseling these teams, and also change management. I know in my organization, when I worked at the Inspector General's office, one division really had a lot of different teams when they were looking at different functions within the Department of Justice, and they had team leaders. And you know, I helped them a lot out where they had conflict and so forth. So it was very, very interesting to do. So what I'm going to do now is, there was an interesting study conducted by Google to really understand what it takes to be an effective team. So there's a video, and I'd like to go ahead and show that right now.
Technology companies encourage their employees to work together because studies show that teams tend to innovate faster, achieve higher productivity, see mistakes more quickly, and find better solutions to problems. Yet, not every team is successful. So how do you build a highly effective team that is capable of delivering expected results? A study run by Google will shed some light on this question and help us identify traits that all successful Google teams shared. Several years ago, Google launched an internal project, Aristotle, which was a huge data study focused on the teamwork. The tech giant spent millions of dollars tracking 180 separate teams for 3 years. The goal of the project was simple yet ambitious: to find out what are the traits of the highest performing teams. In other words, the company wanted to know why some teams stumbled while others soared. Initially, the researchers' hypothesis was that maybe best teams had members who liked each other a lot, or there was a healthy mix of personality types, or the team members were friends outside of work. Yet, none of these seemed to matter. The researchers could not find any meaningful patterns in the data. Basically, there was no evidence that a mix of specific personality types, or skills, or backgrounds made any difference. The who part of the equation didn't seem to matter. As the researchers continued to study the groups, they noticed two behaviors that all of the best teams shared. First is that the team members spoke in roughly the same proportion, a phenomenon the researchers call inequality in distribution of conversational turn-taking. On some teams, everyone spoke during each task, while on others, leadership shifted among teammates from assignment to assignment. But in each case, at the end of the day, everyone had spoken roughly the same amount. In other words, as long as everyone got a chance to talk, the team did well. But if only one person or a small group spoke all the time, the collective intelligence declined. Second, the good teams all had high average social sensitivity, a fancy way of saying they were skilled at reading how others felt based on their tone of voice, their expressions, and other nonverbal cues. One of the easiest ways to determine social sensitivity is to show someone photos of a person's eyes and ask to describe what that person is feeling. An exam known as the reading the mind in the eyes. People on successful teams scored about average on this test. They seemed to know when someone was feeling upset or left out. People on less effective teams, in contrast, scored below average. They seemed to be less sensitive towards their colleagues. By the end of the project, researchers came to a conclusion that it didn't matter who was on the team. What mattered was how team members treated each other. Teams where everybody talked and everybody showed respect by listening and paying attention created psychologically safe atmosphere inside the team. And psychological safety of each member in the group had a positive effect on the team's ability to succeed.
Okay, I just actually found that really, really interesting because just from the dynamics of if everyone gets a chance to participate, and especially from the concept of knowing and reading other people's eyes, that's really a function of emotional intelligence as well. So I really found that interesting in the study that, really doesn't matter who's in that team, as long as you're participating with each other, everyone is equal member of that part of team, and you're able to understand that other person, and by reading them and how they're feeling and so forth, that team's going to be successful. So I really kind of thought that was a real interesting study that they did, and maybe one of these days I'm going to try to get the full study and see what more of the data.
Technology.
Okay. Another thing that I believe in the materials for this week is some of the enablers of more effective group work and teamwork. What things really help the team other than clear, other than being able to talk and give and. Geez, I'm losing my train of thought there. Sorry about that. But as you can see here, clear and measurable objectives are very important to the team, personal commitment, management attitudes, and so forth. So I think if, and this was done back in 1997, I think if we had looked at this today, and especially with that Google study, we'd probably find this list of enablers to be a little bit different. So. And also, too, this is another job aid that you can find in this week's lesson, how to help effective teams, what the teams can do. And I think they actually are pretty close to what that Google study said. Be honest with each other, communicate openly, have a shared space, and empower each other. So this is probably a little bit more applicable to today. So any questions on team effectiveness? All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to problem solving. Now, we're going to talk about problem solving from an organizational perspective. Problem solving should not be conducted in a vacuum. When you have a diverse group of employees, they can bring each a unique perspective and ideas to help solve problems. And as you can see, effective problem solving depends on a lot of different factors. One is, just as we saw in that Google video, the ability to listen and understand. And conflict is not always bad, and sometimes conflict can be good. So because you then exchange ideas more willingly, and especially if your willingness and ability to listen. Well, so conflict can be a good thing in problem solving. Also, willingness to encourage and support team members, have everybody participate, as you can see in that Google study. Sometimes people, and I want to use the old beating a dead horse, you have to, keep moving and trying to really look at the actual problem itself. And once that's solved, move on. Okay? Refuse to use power as a problem-solving tool. Someone, the leader of the group shouldn't say, okay, well, we can't come to a decision. I'm just going to say this is the way we're going to solve it. Really shouldn't be doing that, because there's going to be resentment with another. And then also, too, if someone challenge you, you have the confidence to accept those challenges and move on and help with the problem-solving process. Now, on this slide, there's a 7-step approach to problem solving, and I'll just go over it very quickly. Explore the problem and define what the problem is. And I think that's the most important part of it. Really understand what the problem is, not what the causes of the problem are, what the real problem is. You want to gather information on the situation and cause, choose criteria for judging the information, explore what the ideal solution and possible realistic options. You might have a plethora of different solutions, and you might have to boil them down. And evaluate the realistic option and choose, implement the choice, and evaluate, and then adjust implementation based on evaluation. So, and also in your class materials, there's something a little bit more in depth. There's a problem solving worksheet. If you ever need to use that, then you're going to have that available to you. So any questions? I hope you're still out there. All right. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to decision making. Can someone just speak up? Make sure everyone's there. Someone's there.
Hello. Right here.
Still
Okay.
here.
I'm all of a sudden fearing that I've just spent the last half hour speaking to nobody. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you very much. It's been a long day for me. Sorry about that. Okay. Alcides, you said you just have you have some background noise? Is there something going on my end?
Oh, no, not on your end.
Oh, okay.
It's yeah, my sister's doing taekwondo practice behind me, so
okay.
so yeah, it's a little loud back there, so I stay quiet.
Okay, understood. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to decision making. We make decisions every day, and here are the different types of decisions that we must make. If we have some type of ethical dilemma, requires people to place values on options and make judgments. Sometimes executive decisions, team decisions, consensus making decision. Doesn't mean that everybody has to agree with the accepted decision. Well, I had a great example of that today in my board. We did have to make everyone did have to agree. Okay. But, we had to make some type of decision based on all the facts of the case. And our job was to really look at, was there a violation of any of these zoning ordinances within the city of Bristol? And we decided that there wasn't. So through a lot of, over 2 hours of a public hearing, we came to that. So there's a lot of different decisions that we have to make on a daily basis. So, okay. So, we were kind of talking about decision making, and on the screen you'll see the criteria for effective team decision making, and I'll let you go ahead and look at that, but it's really kind of repetitive from what we saw before. But also you see on the right-hand side some guidelines conducive to consensus decision making. You really want to try to do a win-win situation. Look and see if there's some type of alternatives that are acceptable. You don't want people in decision making just to give in. Sometimes we're just you're gonna go after the people until they just give up. You don't want to be doing that. You really have to have the right attitudes and behaviors and and allowing other people to speak. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful for you. And also too, in your materials, there is another worksheet, a job aid called the problem solving worksheet. So here is some different decision making approaches. And one of them is multi-voting. Basically what happens is you get together as a group and you brainstorm ideas and you just put them out on paper or on the screen or whatever. And then you kind of vote on, okay, let's all look at recommendation number 1. Let's vote on it, okay? Yay, nay, and then you kind of go through each one of those, and then you get to a point where after all your brainstorming, you might have 1 or 2 or 3 different recommendations to help with that decision. So you just kind of work it down from there. One of the ones that I've used in a report for performance technology in the performance improvement is force field analysis, and I'm going to go over that a little bit on the next slide, where you determine what the things that are helping with performance and what are hurting the performance. But we'll talk about that in the next slide. Some of you may have used the fishbone diagram. You kind of draw out maybe a process if you're having a problem with the process, and that might help you. And the weighted matrix is something I don't think I've ever used, but what you might end up doing, what you do with this one is you come up with all the different potential solutions for the decision, and then you weight the factors and saying, well, this one's more important than the other, and then you assign a numerical weight to each one of them and do it that way. So going back to the force field analysis and how you can use it in performance improvement, if you remember, we talked about in the really early on is you're looking at where the present level of performance is, and then what the desired level performance is. In the cause analysis worksheet, which you're going to see on the next slide, is how I collect that information. And what we do in a graphical form, put in there, what do you feel is driving forces at the present level of performance, and what's holding people back or restraining from performing any better. And here is a worksheet that can be used. You just talk about the present level performance, what the desired level, what's the goal, and then if you can see on the left-hand side, those are the 6 areas of the behavior engineering model. And so you collect information from participants and about clear expectations, relevant feedback, and so forth. And how I did it, remember when we were talking about cause analysis, I provided you with a cause analysis worksheet. And so how I would collect that information for the driving or restraining forces is really answering these yes and no questions. Has clear performance expectations been communicated to your employees? So then I would just calculate, yes, that is a driving force, and no would be a restraining force. So you kind of look graphically where the areas that you really need to focus on. So I really liked using it, and it was really useful for me in what I was doing with my organization. So is there any questions on that? Okay. Let's move on to strategic planning. Now, as you can see on the screen, a strategic plan is a blueprint for an organization and really sets the organization.
Dr. Danaher,
Yes.
can I ask you one question? So
Yeah, sure.
the last thing you were mentioning with the different, I forgot what you was. One of them, would you think it's like a SWOT analysis, like so, like the strengths, weaknesses? I can't think of the last one that was on there.
Yeah, it could be that, yeah, to some degree, because you are looking at the strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with SWOT analysis, but I'm more familiar with this type. So, yeah, I think in a SWOT analysis, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you do determine, the positive factors and the negative factors.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, in relationship to what we're doing here, the positive factors in the SWOT analysis would be driving forces,
Okay.
and then the negative will be the restraining one. So,
Okay. That's all I wanted to know.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I tried to find the actual one that the force field analysis that I actually did, but I couldn't find it on my laptop. I don't know if I sent it to myself at home. So, but good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as you can see, the strategic plan is a blueprint for organization and organizational goals and objectives, and they're generally long-term, sometimes 5 to 10 years, and you can find UMBC's strategic plan on their website. So I've had quite a lot of experience in working on strategic plans, not only from employee development, but when I was with my last organization, I was on a committee that helped with developing a strategic plan for the Office of Inspector General. And we did that actually every 3 years because things changed so much in the Department of Justice that we did our strategic plan a little bit more often than most people do. So when you're looking at your organization, you might want to make a recommendation that, employees or the organization needs a longer term focus on how they're going to perform, and having a strategic plan might be a recommendation that you want to make. Okay, organizational value. Now let's look at that and its value system. If you want to truly understand your organization's culture, you must really first start with your values. And values determine the definition, of good and bad. Values are really at the heart of the culture, and they form the culture, and they are really, in most cases, the lifeline of an organization. And so, for most of us, when our behavior is in conflict with our values, we experience stress and frustration and sometimes pain. So this ultimately affects what we do, and it affects our organization. So an organization value creates the organization vision of the world of how the people are treated, how information is communicated and shared, how employees act and create, how people respond to mistakes and failures, and how individuals take risks, learn, and grow. Well, is there a document where you can find the organizational value or the culture? No, not necessarily. And we're going to talk a little bit more about culture in the next slide. But you can get a sense of the organizational value once you start working in an organization and talk to people and understand how employees are treated within your organization. I know I keep talking about my last organization, but I really went out with a super organization, and the organizational value of the Office of Inspector General was just phenomenal of how employees were treated, and the professionalism of really all of the employees. So, and you were able to make mistakes and be able to learn from that and grow, and it wasn't held against you. So I was very fortunate to be able to have a chance to work there. So when I was talking about values, I talked about culture, and organizational culture is really a collection of the values and expectations and practices that guide and inform all team members' actions. Now think of it as a collection of traits that make the organization what it is. A great culture exemplifies positive traits that lead to improved performance, while a dysfunctional company or organization culture brings out qualities that hinder even the most successful organization. Now, organizational culture affects all aspects of the business, from punctuality and tone to contract terms and employee benefits. So when workplace culture aligns with the employees, they're more likely to feel more comfortable, supported, and valued. Companies that prioritize culture can also difficult weather times, and changes in business environment come out stronger. And I think that's nothing, I mean, the last year or so has really proven that the businesses that did survive really probably had an organizational culture that was really healthy and was supportive of the employees. Here are just maybe a short example of cultural silent killers, things that really just do it in for culture. Unclear strategic direction. You have a management team or leadership team that's really ineffective. Leadership that's too top down. They're too controlling, or you know what? They don't really care. Too laissez-faire. Communication is ineffective. Lack of coordination, integration, and lack of down-the-line leadership development. So some of you may be saying, geez, that's my organization, and I hope it's not. But if within your project you feel that these are some of the problems, then it could be a culture problem. So in Job Aid 711 in your materials, there's a more detailed analysis where you can look at the culture and really dig down deep into it. All right, the last topic in this group is diversity. And I think we're all very familiar with diversity. We have very diverse workforces, and it's good to have that diversity. We've got different genders and ethnic backgrounds and people coming from all different situations. It's good for an organization. It's healthy for an organization to be diverse. So maximizing diversity, I think, is going to make both the employees more productive, but the organization as a whole, because people have so much different experiences to offer. So, okay, that's it for all of those. Is there any questions on any of that we're going to cover? Because the last thing we're going to cover is the Danaher business system. So is there any questions so far?
Not current.
Oh, sorry.
Uh-huh.
Can you just remind me the difference between organizational culture and climate?
Ooh, wow, organizational culture and, did you say culture and climate?
Yeah, so I know there's a difference, but at the same time, I know it's kind of intertwined. I know culture is pretty much, it comes from the people, I guess their beliefs and their values. But I know there's an organizational climate, but I can never remember the real difference.
What I'm trying to think back into my Navy days, because we used to do, and actually in the federal government, we do an organizational climate assessment. I think the difference between the culture is what's in that organization and how it functions. The climate is a measurement of the culture. Okay, so One thing that I can remember, I mean, every year when I was in the federal government, we used to take a survey run by the Office of Personnel Management and ask multiple questions about the organization, the leadership, the training, and so forth. I think what ended up being was a ranking of the best places to work in the federal government. So I kind of think that is more of the organizational climate. The climate is more measured, or it's a measurement. So, and,
Okay.
and okay, does that make sense? I mean, because when I was looking, when I go from one organization to another, one of my decision-making factors, and I got lucky enough where I can pick and choose what organization I was going to work for, because one time I had 3 different offers. But I would look at the best places to work in the federal government and see where that organization ranked. And that could tell me what that organizational climate was like. So hopefully
So
Okay.
that
it's more
helped.
like so I guess like you're saying like the culture is more like what how the people behave, but the
Mhm.
climate is more like what the person how we measure their experience. So what the people experience in that culture.
Yes. You did, Shakira, you did a way better job than I did explaining it. I get too verbose. Sometimes I don't think linearly like you do. So
No,
thank you.
I got what you were saying though, but yeah, I think I feel
Yeah,
like that's what I'm getting from it.
yeah. And
Okay.
Joey, you're very good at that too. You decipher what I'm trying to say and put it in good clear, succinct terms. So, but thank you. So, anything else? That was a great question. I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
So just like one more, I guess, clarification question. So for climate, would you say it's more like measuring competencies? So maybe like teamwork.
No, not measuring. Well, teamwork could be one of it. It's not necessarily measuring competencies. It's measuring the culture within the organization. How effective are the senior executives? How effective are the leadership? What about training? Okay, how do you feel that the organization treats you as far as pay? How does the organization treat you as far as personal issues and so forth? There's just a lot of different factors in there. So it's not necessarily competencies, it's how the organization culture treats their employees.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Okay, the last thing we're going to cover is the topic, as I said, the IO Advisory Board asked that I cover it. And I have to be honest with you, I'm not that familiar with it, especially since I spent most of my working career in the federal government. So I really got this off their website, and I'm really basically going to read this. In the mid 80s, Danaher Operating Company, faced with an intensifying competition, launched improvement effort based on the then new principles of lean manufacturing. Some of you may have heard of lean or Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, and so forth. It's a process improvement methodology. The initiative succeeded beyond anyone's expectation, reinforcing the operating company's industry leadership and bringing forth the Danaher business system. Now, fueled by the core values, the Danaher business system engine drives the company through a never-ending cycle of change and improvement. Exceptional people developing outstanding plans and executing them with world-class tools to construct a sustainable process, resulting in superior performance. And superior performance and high expectations attract exceptional people who continue the cycle. So on the next slide is really the tenets of the Danaher business system, quality, delivery, cost innovation. They look at processes, people. They listen to the customers. They talk to to their customers. They think about innovation and how they can move forward and that. So I think the best way to explain this is I did find a video, I believe, that the company put together, and it talks a little bit about this business system. So let's go ahead and see that.
There's an old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, this image that we commonly refer to as the DBS logo is certainly worth a few hundred words to explain the key messages it's designed to convey. I like to start with our 5 core values. Our values start with people, our people. The first of our core values is the best team wins. We challenge ourselves to put the best team on the field every day. A team of talented, collaborative, and engaged associates who are charged with the responsibility of listening to customers. That brings us to the second of our core values. Customers talk, we listen. Our role is to listen, to understand, to gain deep insights into the needs, some explicit, some implicit, of our customers. And that brings us to the third of our core values. Kaizen is our way of life. Customers challenge us. We challenge ourselves to continuously improve. The fourth of our core values is innovation defines our future. In an increasingly challenging, competitive, fast-paced environment, innovation can set us apart. Innovation can lead to exceptional value propositions. Innovation can be our ultimate differentiator. Ultimately, we come to our fifth core value. We compete for shareholders. By putting the best team on the field, by listening to customers every day, by driving continuous improvement, by embracing innovation. Ultimately, customers benefit, but in the end, our shareholders benefit as well. We live these core values by being process-oriented and customer-centric. Our best people lead to exceptional planning, strategic planning, product planning, talent development. We drive process through policy deployment, one of the most powerful tools of DBS. And ultimately, that leads to sustainability and performance. We measure that performance with the 4 values customers share: quality, delivery, cost, and innovation. Finally, we believe that we exist at Danaher for a purpose, a shared purpose. What unifies us is how we together are helping realize life's potential for ourselves, our customers, our suppliers and partners, and ultimately our shareholders. All of this is captured inside and around the Danaher Corporation logo. And that's because DBS is who we are, and it's how we do what we do. It differentiates us, and it's our ultimate competitive advantage.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty good corporation to work for, wouldn't you think? Oops, okay. Well, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the Danaher Corporation, they have their own YouTube channel, and they really have some interesting videos on there where employees are talking about what they do in the organization. So I thought I'd share that with you. So, okay, that is it for this week. And I appreciate you sticking in there with me a little bit longer than we normally do. I just want to make sure that for those of you who didn't hear at the beginning of today's lessons, that I made a mistake in the email that I sent out. I said that Part C was due April 24th. That is incorrect. It's due April 25th by midnight. That is a Sunday. And again, I'll be able to turn those around to you pretty quickly. And then the final is due on May 6th. And again, I'll have that turned around pretty quickly, because in the final, and there is a template for both of these, make sure you please follow that template. The final, you'll just be putting A, B, and C together, all the different parts. You'll be adding an executive summary, the title page, and any references if you have those. So if there's any questions on anything that we covered today, or the assignments that are due, and if not, that's it. Have a great week. That is our Tennessee home, and on the left, that's my wife, She Shed, and she's really enjoying being back there. So thanks, Shakira. So, all right, have a great week, and we'll see you next week. And next week, we'll be talking about intervention, selection, and evaluation. So have a great week, everybody. All right, take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adios.
Thank you.